Let's give it 2 more minutes. I know it's early, it's 10 o'clock on a Saturday, so thank you so much for being here. Again, this is the Majoring in Media workshop that was created by our great junior board, our NATAS Chicago Midwest Junior Board, which is a board consisting of students and young professionals aged 18 to 26. It's an augment to our Board of Governors, our NATAS Board of Governors. And this event is about majoring in media for high school students interested in majoring in media. And we're learning about the types of college and university programs that are out there for broadcast and film and documentary and TV and also journalism. And we're getting a few more attendees. All right. And before I introduce our panel moderators, I just wanted to let all of you know that in addition to the Emmys and our other signature event, Silver Circle, we also offer scholarships. We offer scholarships to college students and to high school students, and those deadlines are coming up soon. Our scholarships for high school students, we have a deadline of March 17th, 2023. Our scholarships for college and graduate students are on the deadline's February 17th, 2023. So you'll want to visit our website at chicagoemyonline.org to apply. So please do that. And then for adults who may be on, we are actively looking for donors to our various scholarship funds, and you can donate, and it would be preferable if you could donate before the end of the year for tax purposes. But the NATAS Chicago Foundation is our scholarship arm, so please consider donating to that scholarship fund, again, by going online at chicagoemyonline.org. So without further ado, I want to get started with our program. As I mentioned, this is a workshop that's sponsored by our junior board. Again, it's an offshoot of the Board of Governors, which consists solely of students and young professionals aged 18 to 26. So this is really an appropriate workshop for the junior board. And it was organized by our moderators, who are members of the junior board, Ellie Hall and Juliette Strangio. And without further ado, I'd just like to introduce them and have them start the program. Ellie and Juliette, feel free to go ahead.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you to everyone for coming today. And thank you to our panelists for being here. We're very excited to be talking to you guys. I'm Juliette Strangio. I'm from Australia, but I am currently in Chicago. I am working for a writer-producer currently. So I'm also in the early part of my career in media. So it's very exciting to be talking to everyone today. And when Ellie and I were putting together this event, we were really excited to kind of talk to high schoolers about what their future might look like if they have interests in media, which can be kind of overwhelming because a lot of people are probably watching the morning show starring Reese Witherspoon, etc. And those shows kind of show you what it's like to be at the end of a career and not necessarily at the beginning of one. And so we're excited to kind of talk to all of the panelists who will introduce momentarily about how they got to where they are, about the courses their universities offer, which could be great opportunities, and then also alternatives to a university degree if you're not sure specifically where you want to go. Just letting everyone know, we're going to be recording this event and it will be uploaded on about Monday or Tuesday into the archives. And if you have any questions, you can pop them in the Q&A and we will answer them at the end if there is any time. Ellie, to you.
Hi guys, welcome this morning. My name is Ellie Hall. I'm a video editor here in Chicago and I work for a creative agency, so I'm more in the commercial route. I am a member of the junior board, as John mentioned, and one of the things the junior board did last year when we were first starting up, last year was our first year being formed, is we created a resource guide specifically aimed at high school students that were kind of figuring out where to start, similar to what this panel will cover, but it has a little bit more like concrete information and links. And so I'm going to drop that in the chat for all of you. It's free to download. And what it covers is it kind of like lists out like, hey, if this is what you're interested in the classroom, then maybe this would be a good like role for you after you graduate. And it kind of makes those connections early on if you're kind of struggling to figure out where your place is. And then it links to things like videos, articles, YouTube channels, a little bit of everything, like resources that we all used when we were in high school to kind of get our start. Everything from like DIY filmmaking, like how to like, you know, build your own steady cam, you know, on a budget, like stuff like that, to like articles about like universities, colleges, programs in the area. And then also things like organizations that are like in the Chicago Midwest area that really do help young filmmakers. So if you're kind of struggling to look for a place to start or people to reach out to, or like a community that you're looking to share with, that's what the resource guide is meant to provide. So take a look if you sounds like something you would be interested in. And that is in the chat if you can find that on the bottom panel. And without further ado, we will get started. So we're going to start by introducing our panel. We'll have everyone start off by just saying their name, where they teach or what school they're here representing, and what they do outside of teaching. A lot of people have their own creative practices, and we'd love to hear about those and how you identify yourself within this very broad scope of an industry. So without further ado, we'll start with Marie, if you want to kick things off.
Sure. Hi, guys. First of all, thank you to Juliette and Ellie for having us, and for all of you guys for joining. My name is Marie Halliday. I'm an adjunct professor at Columbia College Chicago's Semester in LA program. And my day job, I should say, is I'm a director of development at a company called Crazy Legs Productions, which is a production company out of Atlanta, Georgia. But obviously I'm here in LA. And I work as a director of development for them, but then also I produce the features that we make within that department. So I kind of stay on projects from conception to distribution. And I have a cat that's going to try to join us during this panel, so apologies for that.
Great. Caroline, do you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carolina Posse, and I am representing Columbia College Chicago. I am Associate Chair and Producing Area Coordinator of Cinema and Television Arts. And I'm also a creative producer. So I produce independent films, both short and features.
Sorry. Lynn, do you want to go next? And you guys can just follow as whatever feels natural. Feel free to chime in. You don't need me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ellie and Juliette, for hosting and asking us to be here. My name is Lynn Pustay. I am the Student Success Manager for Film and Television at Second City Film School. And my function there is really to be a professional development specialist with the students that are attending our school, and to book and connect students with industry professionals and get them prepared and started for the next leg of their journey in their career.
Hi. Oh,
Go ahead, yeah. I'll hop after you.
thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks again, Juliette and Ellie, for putting this together. I'm Aisha Allblom, and I'm a full-time instructor in the Film and Digital Media program at Loyola University Chicago. Outside of that, I'm an independent filmmaker, so
I know we all can agree when we teach our passion and we make time for our creative work, the balance is what I struggle with. So on the side, I write and direct my own narrative film. Thank you.
And I'm Ariane Nettles. I am a lecturer and the director of audio journalism programming at Northwestern's Medill School. So I teach a lot of our audio reporting courses, our podcasting courses, and I also help kind of develop a lot of our kind of courses and our workshops and kind of the extra programs that we're starting to offer at Medill. And outside of my work at Northwestern, I am a freelance journalist, so I can't let that part of things go, where I do still do audio journalism as well as other multimedia work.
I guess that leaves me. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Andrews. I'm an associate professor at DePaul University, and I chair post-production. Primarily, I teach visual effects courses in all of our experimental technologies in filmmaking. I myself, sort of independently, have worked for quite a while as a visual effects supervisor, primarily for independent films and features, but I'm also a filmmaker in my own right, primarily working within CG animation, virtual reality, and virtual production.
Wow, that's very cool. We have a large range of interests here. I wanted to ask, what does the day-to-day look like for these jobs? Because we have people in development, we have people in post-production, in journalism. Like, I think it would be helpful for teenagers to hear what that actually looks like. Because like, especially development, Marie, and post-production, like there's so many elements that go into these things, and developing short films, like what would be an example of a day in each of your fields?
I'm happy to jump in. I wish that there was, like, honestly, for my life, I wish that maybe there was more of a structure to it, and that it was easy to say, you know, from day to day, I wake up and I do this, that, and the other. The truth of the matter is that it's dependent on a lot of factors, mostly for me, based on where we're at in terms of our slate of projects. Meaning, are we in pre-production for a movie versus we're in sort of a lull period where I would be doing more of the development on the day-to-day. But for anybody joining who hears the term, you know, somebody works in development, really what that means is that, you know, you're somebody who is helping to either hire a writer onto a project and then get that project ready to shoot, or it could be that you are sourcing that material and then working with a writer over time to try to, again, sort of get that material ready to shoot. And so for me, a lot of what it is when I'm just in that heavy development period is taking a lot of meetings and reading a ton of scripts, because I said that backwards. It's reading the scripts first and then figuring out people that sort of have a unique voice or they have a really great project. And then usually if I spark to something and then the rest of my team sparks to something, it's having meetings with those writers, talking about the material. And then eventually getting to the point where we as a company decide we want to take a project on, or we want to take a writer on, and we might have some type of idea that has been sort of gestating internally. And so from that point forward, my job takes on many different avenues. And I would say one of them is going through the legal process. So I talk to lawyers every day. I get the script deals done. So I'm doing a lot of kind of boring stuff on the business affairs side sometimes, and then doing a lot of script notes as we continue to sort of develop the material. And then eventually when we get into the pre-production phase, my life just becomes a jumble of craziness where it's more different things on different days, but it's having meetings with, you know, directors who we're going to put on the project. It's having meetings with key personnel, key positions like production designers and costume designers and everything that you need in order to make a film. And then sort of managing the other producers that are on the project, the other talents that are on the project. And I think of my job as sort of being glue at the center of the project that is there to facilitate all of these other amazing artists doing their best job. And then when the movie is done, it's sitting in through cuts and giving cut notes on projects and then sort of talking about marketing and all of these things. So it's a lot of different things, but yeah, a lot of craziness and a lot of just needing to wear a lot of different hats.
That's so interesting. How many projects do you have in development at one time? Or is it just kind of one?
We've got about 7 at a time, which is actually pretty small. Usually when you work at a production company, like my first job ever was at HBO Films, and they would have 75 projects and they would make 2 projects a year. And at Crazy Legs, we really love this idea that we're not just trying to develop, we're developing to make something. And so we're very, very strategic about what we take on, and we have a much smaller slate. And the hope is that we can then make all of the projects that we take on.
That's amazing. And how many people are on your team?
Just me and one other person.
Oh, that's nice. It's a little more insular.
Really insulated. The company itself has about 54 employees, but we do a lot in reality. We do a lot in documentary, all different fields. So on the feature side, it's just me and one other person.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Arian, tell us about audio journalism, because I feel like, podcasts are kind of the big thing right now. So I'd love to hear you talk about what that looks like for you and then your work as a journalist.
Yeah, I think there are some similarities between radio journalism and TV journalism, especially a lot of the news that you see or listen to every day, and how those kind of newsrooms run. So a lot of times the people that we maybe see or hear the most might be the reporters who go out. Those are the people who you might see on TV or hear on the radio because they're out in the field. If you're watching TV, those are the ones that are on location. And then you might see kind of the anchors or the hosts who are in the studio kind of throwing to the people who are out in the field. So radio and TV both have kind of that position. And then there are a ton of jobs and folks who are usually in some sort of producer or editor role that are in the station. You may or may not ever see their name, but they are really helping run the website. They are helping run and edit and figure out what airs when. And it is such a big, huge machine. At the radio station I worked with, we always used to say, that the newscast is a beast and the beast must be fed, right? It must be, you can't have dead air, right? So there always has to be a story that is coming up. So there is a huge production of a lot of people to make that work. And then on the podcasting side of things, I kind of like to see podcasting as, especially if a podcasting department is part of, let's say, a newsroom, as maybe not a special, because there are a lot of special companies who are doing amazing podcasting. And so you might want to work for one of those. But if, let's say, it is a part of a public radio station, for example, it is kind of similar to maybe how a TV newsroom might have a special documentary team or a team that does longer form work, like a 2020 special that takes longer to produce is very similar to podcasting. So it's really just longer form storytelling. And it requires a much different muscle, but a lot of times if you're a part of a bigger newsroom, you have a lot of kind of still collaboration with the other parts of that newsroom in the best way possible. There are also a lot of amazing new companies that are sometimes formed by people who are from a lot of these traditional journalism organizations, and they are doing just really amazing work in the podcasting space. And so I think it's really amazing how there are so many more options now than I think that there used to be for this type of long form work, especially.
Yeah, it's so much more accessible to kind of start doing it independently, which I think people had been doing with film for a long time, but journalism it can be hard to feel validated as someone to be taken seriously. But now I feel like there's so many people just churning out.
Yeah,
amazing
yeah.
pieces.
And I think podcasting is trying to maybe catch up with film, as far as it's a really amazing how, as an independent filmmaker, you can make a great film all by yourself, right? I mean, it's hard, but you can maybe make it happen. You can pull together some resources, and then you can kind of take it on, you know, the road in a sense, and take it to different festivals and kind of garner extra attention for it that way. Podcasting is not necessarily that same thing. We're just starting to get awards for podcasting, and so it can sometimes feel, you know, if you don't want to put a lot of time into something, nobody listens to it, right? It's the same thing. And so I think it's starting to grow, and people are starting to try to figure out, well, how can we also, if you're making a podcast independently, how can you do that? So you're starting to see more models, like people are creating like Patreons, where they'll ask people to just donate whatever they can, or donate $2 or $3, right? Like, how many people who really love you might do $2 or $3 a month to support a podcasting project that they really think is great? And so people are trying to create new and different ways to maybe support podcasting in a way that could be a little bit different, given the circumstances. And now we're starting to see, like, you know, we saw the Pulitzers are now opening their doors to podcasting, which is very big. So it's changing still.
Cool, thank you. Aisha, I just want to ask you, because you've made so many short films that have done super well. And I think something that's very helpful for people to understand about making anything really is that it is all collaboration. And so I'd love to hear your point of view on what that process is like and how it's kind of evolved for you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I might be jumping the gun, but we were going to talk about sometimes you don't have to go to school to make a great film, and school might work for others. School helped me personally, but I got my bachelor's in film theory in Orlando back in 2013, and then I took a break and realized, you know, I'm working at Pier 1. What the heck am I doing? I want to be making films. I want to direct. I want to write. So I knew that grad school would help me. So going to grad school, I went to Columbia College Chicago. So I know Carolina. So I went there for cinema directing, and that was the best experience of my life, because through grad school, I met people that I work well with. There's a producer I work well with. There is a editor who's edited my 5 of my films so far, you know. And so I think grad school for me was a great way to network with people in the same mindset. And so to answer your question, leaving grad school, and now I'm like, okay, I love teaching as well. So I got to teach film. I'm so lucky to be able to do that. But on the side, as I continue to create shorts and features, I have a crew that I trust that will work with me, that will continue to work with me. And that's a huge tidbit I wanted to tell everybody that's listening today, is the best thing you can do is find, because film is collaborative, is finding people you can work with professionally. And I tell my students, it doesn't mean I have to be best friends with them, because I have close friends I could never work with professionally. Nothing against them, right? But there's people that I won't hang out with, right? But I can work so professionally with them. So I think, you know, going to these cocktail parties and finding out where there's film organizations within your city or state, and taking that extra step to meet people. But also for me, it helped going to grad school, where it was a very intimate setting for me, where I was forced to meet people and interact, because, you know, it's a saying, producers are very talkative. It's true. Directors are quiet. I like to hide behind my work. So it forced me to meet folks. And then there I ended up collaborating and finding a crew. And then through the independent filmmaking route, it's finding those, because you asked what your day-to-day looks like. And I'll be teaching and then I'll get off work and I'll be on a set that same night, either script supervising usually for a friend, or helping editing in some capacity. So I think Marie, I agree with you. There's no structure to film, which is scary but also fun, because the spontaneous aspect about it keeps you alive, and it's rewarding when it's your passion. So for everyone listening, it's the road less traveled, the arts, but if you're passionate about it, it's so worth it. I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like the emphasis on collaboration and finding the right collaborators is like a very important thing to emphasize, because I think, I mean, in any job, really, you have to find people that kind of elevate what you're doing and not the opposite. And that can be a process, but school can be good for that. Brian, you are deep in post-production world, correct?
Yeah,
Talk to us what that looks like.
Absolutely. So first of all, I'd actually say the word that I had when you asked this question at the beginning was, what do we all do is collaborate. What I'm doing every day is collaborating in some form, whether or not it's designing a sequence, actually working on set with people, or doing a lot of what people would call post-production work. Well, I will say that even though I'm chair of post-production, we talk about it as post-production, the term post and the idea of like you have pre-production, production, post-production is old, and it's no longer really valid anymore. All of the folks that you consider to be post-production roles, editors, sound people, visual effects people, we're all working on the big production like in the development phase. Like when this script is getting put together, it's coming to us. We're designing sequences ahead of time. We're pre-cutting, pre-visualized animations to things, which will help the producers then budget how they're actually going to shoot the project on set, and that's getting cut together so you can already get story notes before you actually even get the actors together, so you know where this project is going. So it's far more integrated than one would think with that really kind of easy definition of pre-production, production, post-production. So we just call it all production. But in terms of what does my day look like, it's kind of shifting through different forms of collaboration. There's sort of design and development phases where we're sort of working, trying to sort of figure out what a project will be, or what particular shots or sequences will look like. Then there's a lot of content generation, which happens both on set and as well as digitally, working with teams sort of generating and creating content. And then there generally is, sort of finishing and sort of refining things to hit the director's vision, or all the different creative visions that we have. One thing that I actually also would say, as we're talking kind of about school and things where people are sort of finding themselves, is that it's not just the writer or director who are, these sort of creative centerpieces of a project. All of the various roles have creative input in different ways, depending on where you are in the process. And there's a lot of different ways in to find those. So I think a lot of, I find with a lot of people who are freshmen or new coming into the field, is oftentimes they have very specific ideas. I want to direct just because I like movies. And then they may discover that, whoa, that's like dealing with people in a way that I didn't understand, but I'm actually way better at crafting story after the fact, and all of a sudden editing becomes their thing, or other parts of the process. So being open and aware to finding yourself within the field of media, and you don't really know that until you do it, until you get out and try those things.
100%. That actually is a great segue. Carolina, you're a producer, which I feel like is kind of like development, kind of the unsung hero of any production. They're kind of doing everything and everyone's like, what do they do? Could you tell us a little about what it looks like to be a producer?
Sure. I tell my students sometimes that, for when everything goes well on set is the director's praise, but when things go wrong, it's always the producer's fault. And, the producer is really, and the best way that I can describe it is really the backbone of every production, and also the brain. We are the leader of every production. We get things done. And we make, and this is personal to me, and there's all sorts of producers, right? There is not one kind of producer. But for me, it is you start from an idea and turn it all the way to, from the development of the idea to the story to eventually the marketing and exhibition of it. So you're involved from the baby stages of a project all the way to the end, and you continue and continue being involved. It is not something that you just hand off and you're done with it. You're entirely devoted to all these projects equally. So I can tell you a little bit about, because I do fiction primarily, fiction narrative. I finished a feature a year and a half ago. We shot it over the summer, and then it took us 6 months to get to a picture lock. And after that, we continued with post-production and coloring and sound design and so forth. And we just finished it, and now I'm prepping, right, to send it to film festivals and hopefully win awards and so forth. So this is going to be a commitment with that film for years and years and years. So it doesn't matter how small your project is, that the process is very similar to a feature, right? Even if your film is just 10 minutes long or 3 minutes long, the process is very similar. And, for just to kind of piggyback some of the things that everybody's saying, as a producer, you wear a lot of hats sometimes, and you have a lot of flexibility on your time. But at the same time, you have to take those projects very seriously, because if it is not you pushing it forward, nobody else is. So the producer is really responsible for getting things moving forward in your project. So you work with all sorts of artists and collaborators, which is one of the most rewarding on a personal level, rewarding aspects of being a producer. And at the same time, you're always seeking funds for your next project. You're developing new materials with different artists and screenwriters. And then, I'm shooting a project in Kansas in June as well. So right now, I'm locking that script while I'm finishing one, I'm developing the other one, and you're just juggling. So if that's a lifestyle that works for you and you like the flexibility of it and the rewards that comes with working with different talents and skill sets and creators, producer is a really great way. And this is cinema production, of course. There's producers in all sorts of media. And there's all sorts of producers as well. It's not one kind, but I love that. I love the opportunity of being able to work with so many different artists, and making ideas become tangible. And then finally you see them on the screen. So it's a process more than the finished product that it's very rewarding for me.
A lot of spinning plates at all times, it sounds like.
It does get a little bit crazy, but it's, if this is, again, and this is to Brian's point, I went to film school wanted to be a director, and then I found my way in producing by default. And I think a lot of students enter film school or any media school really thinking director, it's the most common role. But once you start taking other classes and you start developing skill sets, you realize, okay, wait a minute, I have a passion for something else, or I'm really good at this. And I had no idea, of what that was. And I think that's one of the benefits of being able to have the college experience, because you not only meet a ton of people, but you also see media and storytelling and filmmaking as a much broader umbrella. If you just take a second to look at the credits in any movie, you see that there's hundreds of people involved. Even in a short film, there's so many people involved. And we get that a lot, where students enter the programs and they think they just want to be a director. And then once they take a variety of classes, they realize, wait a minute, I love editing, or I love producing. And now you can do both things or three things. You don't have to pick the one thing like it used to be. And I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue to our next question of, like, if we were to take ourselves back and put ourselves in the shoes of we're just graduating college. And I feel like a lot of people did go into college thinking they wanted to be a director or a cinematographer. I think those are the roles that are talked about the most, and kind of people can grasp their heads around what that is and what that looks like. And so that's kind of where they start from. And so you're leaving college. Maybe you went to school for filmmaking, maybe you didn't. What was the first job you had out of school? Was it in the industry? And how long did it take you to get to working in the industry or finding your path? And what was it about that path that made you stick with it? Marie, if we want to start with you.
Sure. So it's interesting because, so my first job, actually, just to speak very quickly to what Aisha said earlier, because I feel like this will sort of segue into this. I also did a master's program at Columbia College Chicago. So I had studied sort of general media arts at the University of South Carolina and got my bachelor's in that. And then I had worked at sort of this, so I'll kind of take this in two parts because I kind of segment my brain where I have sort of like part one of dipping my toe into the industry and then part two. So part one was graduating from the University of South Carolina with a bachelor's in media arts. I ended up finding my way into this very kind of niche art scene in Columbia, South Carolina. And I ended up working for the only art house theater in the state of South Carolina, which is this really cool theater that still exists called the Nickelodeon Theater. And they put on a really like cool, weird, eclectic film festival, which still exists, called Indie Grits Film Festival. And so I became the assistant director of that festival. I became marketing director of the art house theater. And that was sort of my first job. But through seeing all of the submissions that would come in for that film festival, I started getting really antsy of like, I really want to be making stuff. I want to have some sort of control over content. I was having to watch thousands upon thousands of like bad shorts, which will kind of light a fire in you as an artist or as a creator of like, okay, I want to learn more about this. I want to be out there making stuff too. And so I started looking into grad programs, ended up at Columbia College Chicago. And it was the first year of their creative producing program, which was really interesting. You did a year in Chicago, and then everybody came out to LA and you did internships. And the reason I want to flag this is because Lynn, who is one of our panelists, was instrumental in getting me my first internship, which led to my first job, which was at HBO Films. So honestly, I would not be here without Lynn. And I think what Aisha was highlighting was that, you know, when you are if you decide to obviously study film, whatever you decide to study in college, or even if you decide to take another path, the people that you meet during those time periods, at least for me, have been instrumental throughout my career. The core group that I came out of grad school with are still people that I do business with on a daily basis. And one of my grad school cohort friends became the executive who now does all the financing at the company that I work at. So I do this more of the creative, and he does sort of the financing. And so I don't think I had the idea in my head at 18 that the people that I was going to be meeting were going to stick with me, or that I was going to stick with them for years and years and years. But I now look back and I realize how important it was to foster these relationships. As I'm saying this, I realize I completely lost track of the actual question. So the first job, it was HBO Films. And I was in a tough spot because I got the internship. Lynn helped me get the internship. I went through the internship, and I was lucky enough where they offered me a job at the end of it as an assistant to 2 directors of development at HBO Films. And I was technically supposed to go back to Chicago, shoot a thesis, and that was going to be the last part of my MFA. But I didn't want to go back. I wanted to take the job at HBO. So I had this like really tough choice. I ended up taking the job and not graduating. And that was hell, like that ate away at me for years, because I think it was 5.5 years or something, where I technically had not graduated, even though I had fulfilled all of the credits. I just needed to shoot the thesis. And Columbia was gracious enough after those 5.5 years to let me use one of the features that I had produced as my short film. So eventually I graduated, and now I teach. Sorry, that was long-winded.
No, it was great. So I have a quick question before we keep going with Ellie's question. How many of you went to college for film or journalism or whatever it is you specialize in now? Did all of you? Wow. Arian, you didn't?
Well, I did. I started in fine arts and doing art and technology, but so I went to art school, not film school. But no, I went to UCSD for undergrad and School of Art Institute of Chicago for grad. So
Right.
I'm educated. I got educated. But what I actually would also say just to add to this is that college isn't the only place that you're learning. I would say actually when you're talking about the day-to-day, probably 10%, sometimes up to 20% of my time is still learning. And that may be obvious with learning new technologies and techniques. I do a lot of that. But it's also expanding and learning still as a creative and learning from other people that I'm collaborating with about how they're working, how to work with them and other things. And so that path, that educational path, while it gets very intense in college, it never ends, and it shouldn't end. And really one of the biggest things that you can learn is how to learn and how to learn and grow while you're working professionally, I would say.
Yeah, it's ongoing. And Arian, you also did not go to, talk to us.
No, I didn't. So I went to school for business, and I was working in supply chain and marketing when I started freelance writing on the side. And I kind of realized that I really liked it, and that, I kind of hit a ceiling because I never really learned journalism. Like, I mean, I could write, but not that kind of writing, right? And so there's just kind of some really basic knowledge about how to do a really good story that you kind of don't know without some like kind of basic journalism classes. And so then I went back to school and I did a graduate program, and that was my first time ever doing any formal journalism. But I had done some freelance before that. And so I think that, when you talk a lot about like not needing, or like, like not maybe just relying on school to give you answers, I think that sometimes it's really helpful to kind of explore on your own, because then, maybe you can figure out what your weaknesses are or what you want to learn more of. Because I think for a while, I really thought, there was a point in time I wanted to get like a business PhD. Like I just would know I was going in a really different direction. And so if I hadn't did like, tried stuff on my own, then I wouldn't have been able to go into this grad program and be really focused. And in the program was really where I discovered audio journalism. So, but that was because I had been doing magazine work, wanted to do more magazine work, went to study magazine and realized that magazine and audio, that there were a lot of similarities in how you try to tell conversational stories and be detailed. And so I found that that was a really good mix for me. But my undergraduate work, and actually I did undergrad and got an MBA, and it was all business, and I was miserable. I didn't like it. And so I try to tell my students, because I think a lot of times we feel like we need to rush into school and we got to go back to back and we can't take any pauses to break. But if you don't know what you want to do, it's okay to like take just one class somewhere, or take a class that's free somewhere, or, try a workshop that's not like a full degree class to see if you like it, right? And then you can kind of make a decision on what makes sense. So if you try to say, I think I want to be a filmmaker, or I think I want to be a podcaster, and you try some stuff, then you might say, actually, when I was trying to put this thing together, I realized I loved being up in there trying to do some editing. I want to take some more editing classes. And you may not have ever thought that. Maybe you thought that you wanted to be, you just kind of learn new things about yourself in that period of challenging yourself. And so I was really grateful for that time where I was kind of, I knew that I didn't want to do what I was doing. And I was just kind of on my own trying stuff.
Absolutely. And to that point, where we're kind of talking about like, hey, maybe you don't know if this is something you want to commit the next 4 years to. That's like very valid. And it seems like a lot of people here did, go to school for something somewhat related to what they're studying now. And that's great. That's not everyone's path for sure. But Lynn, I'd love to have you talk about kind of like, you're kind of here representing Second City today. Their film school, what used to be referred to as Harold Ramis, is now Second City Film School, I believe. So if you could kind of talk to how they provide an alternative option to the traditional 4-year degree program.
Sure. So basically, yes, we were Harold Ramis Film School, and now under new ownership and a new brand. So we are Second City Film School right now. And it is a 1-year immersive program that is focused on comedic storytelling for film and television, or storytelling in general. It doesn't always have to be comedy, although some of our students are not doing comedy. So I would say that when I am working with students that apply, it's the whole across the board. Juliette is one of our original, or the original cohort in, I think, 2016.
2016.
Yeah. And so basically what I see coming into our program as an alternative to a 4-year program from when I was working at Columbia is that we have anything from right out of high school, so 18, and I think our oldest student that graduated was 63. So we're a 1-year immersive program that is looking at these things for folks who are either fresh out of college looking for an alternative to a 4-year program, or a lot in the middle, someone who has perhaps been in the industry in some way, but climbed the wrong ladder for themselves. So maybe they started as a writer with a passion and somehow got off into maybe a technical role, and they're very successful in that, but their heart's desire was to write. So they're returning to that now. And then there are some folks who are in maybe retirement, and this is just something, retirement from their former industry. And this is a dream that they had, and they want to be part of things and make movies and shorts and tell their story. So, so I feel like a lot of the time we are spending with students or gap year students. That's another really popular. So that is the alternative that we offer, I think, to a 4-year program. Although, I work with the MFAs at DePaul in the screenwriting program because Second City has a partnership, and I worked at Columbia, and I'm still a huge fan of Columbia in a million ways. Our strength that I see, it's not so much as a technical school, although we do offer some of that, but it is more on the creative aspect of storytelling and movies, and kind of a very immersive thing. So when I'm talking to someone, I genuinely feel that if there is a different program that is better for them than our program, I'm like, try Columbia for this, or DePaul is better at this, or Second City Film School is really good at this chunk. So it's kind of an aerial view, Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer to that question. It sounds like, it's never too late to get started. And I think that's something I've found. I was lucky enough to start studying film in high school, but it's not the sort of career you need a 12-year residency to kind of be qualified for. As long as you work hard, I've found that, the Chicago film industry is very welcoming to newcomers. Our production is amping up more and more every year, and people are, eager for hands-on sets. And it's never too late to get started. So as a mentor and an advisor, Lynn, at Second City and Columbia and DePaul and all these places that you're helping out and guiding students on their path, what is something you, and after you, if anyone else wants to chime in, what is a piece of advice you wish you knew when you were getting ready to start this process that our students, the attendees, are getting ready to start, where they're, getting ready to graduate from high school, thinking about their next steps? What is something you wish, or you could tell people if a piece of advice that you've learned through the years?
Well, part of this secret, we kind of knew this question was coming, so I am a little bit prepared for this, and I have visuals. I would say the biggest thing that in hindsight, that I've noticed both with myself as a creative and in the students that I work with is something that drove me crazy over the arc of, several decades was I thought, and I'm gonna give you my little visual here. I thought that my interest in theater and my interest in improv and visual art and like my devotion to service in the world and blah, blah, I thought they were all on separate paths. And if this is time. So I always feared that I was like all over the place and spinning plates in different ways. And I see this in the students as well. Like one of the biggest questions I get is I feel like I'm a Renaissance person, but I don't know how to speak myself. And that one thing doesn't have to do with the other things. But over the course of time, what I have learned is this piece, which is they are all connected and they will all help you and they will all get you to, over time, you're going to end up in a place that will be you as a creative self. And our job as supporters of all of that is to maybe mirror back your strengths and show you what those connections are. But I guess the advice part would be to not be so precious about any one thing or so scared. Just jump in. It's like, it's believe us, it's all connected. It's connecting in ways that you can't even see, especially like when you're in high school and you're trying to, make these huge, big decisions. It's just a decision. It's just take the next step. And, there will be folks to support you. People in your industry will support you. Your family and friends will support you. Just get out there, have fun, discover your voice, take the next step, trust the process, all the things you always hear, but it really is true. And just know that in years and decades and all of that, you are developing into this thing that maybe you can only see in hindsight. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how long it takes. But yeah, I would say that would be my biggest advice. Jump in, don't be afraid. People are there to support you. And we're all doing this because we love it and we love students and somebody helped us. And I'm surprised at how many people really do want to give back. Anybody here woke up on a Saturday morning to talk to people in high school who we think are really special and potential, you're the next voices. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I mean, maybe I could follow up on that. What I would actually say is make stuff, especially when you're young. Just make stuff, whatever it is. If it's writing, it's a comic book, it's a little short film with your friend, you're a TikTok star, whatever. It's all research and it all fits. I mean, I love how Lynn showed that there's many interests and they kind of come back together in those ways. Like in my own career path, I felt very bifurcated and stressed for a long period of time as well, because I was working professionally doing visual effects, and then like my art and my films were over here, and they felt like they were different things, until I really realized that my professional work was research for my creative work, even if I was doing different things. It was research for my own brain. It was like it was the sketchbook, and even a project that you don't understand how it's going to fit in, you're learning skills, you're learning things, and it's feeding back into the other work that I'm doing. As well as building that network and building that tribe of people that often you find in school, but sometimes through other positions and working on other sets that then you work with and can collaborate with on all the range of the projects. But and actually this kind of relates, I would just say to one of the questions in the chat was asking about whether it's more important to be focusing on a portfolio or an internship, especially at the high school level. And what I would actually say is the portfolio, make stuff, right? I mean, everybody's gonna be looking, whatever it is that's creative, create things, start finding the beginning threads of your voice, and that's what's going to be interesting to college admissions or programmatic admissions more than a particular line or a particular job or an internship. You got plenty of time for those later on. Right now, grow and make stuff as a person.
Yeah, I want to second what you said, Brian, completely. I tell my students the same thing. It's, I really don't care what you do from that 9 to 5. What do you do outside of it? How do you use your time wisely? And I always say, you know, filmmakers, artists are like superhuman because we work that 9 to 5, we have relationships, and then we're like writing scripts at midnight. You know what I mean? So what are you going to do with your free time? Make things. Another thing for advice I wish I would have known is to not compare myself to others. I'm around folks who are, you know, shooting or on sets weekly, and I co-directed my first feature 2 years ago, and it took me like years to develop it. And that's okay. Like sometimes it takes time to develop work, and sometimes it doesn't. Like you can shoot a short in the next month. And that's the beauty of it, is realizing that you're not like any lesser than someone who's shooting something each week. Everybody works differently. So it's going to kill you. Do not compare yourself to folks in this industry. Continue to see what works for you. And as we all know on this panel, the film industry is constantly changing. I'm teaching equipment one year, the next year I got to learn another piece of equipment. It's constantly changing. So being up to date on technology and what works and what doesn't, and then also knowing that your own unique voice is what's going to sell you, right? Be yourself, take your time. Don't think you're any less for not making a piece constantly, and stop comparing yourself. I hope that helps.
I think that's definitely important, especially in the age of TikTok and stuff, where it's like people are so good at churning stuff out, and that stuff is all incredible. But then there is, you know, the other end of the spectrum, which is more of that like fine art, which is you want everything to be considered, and both things are equally valued, but like one can take more time. So you don't get the little endorphin rush as much because it takes so long to get anything done. But it can be so satisfying once you have done that, and doing a feature is insane. So
can I add one thing real quick?
Yeah. So
first of all, if I had gotten any of this, it really truly would have been like meaningful and helpful to me when I was, 17, 18. So everything that has been said so far resonates. The one thing that I would add, which I think is sort of jumping off of both Lynn and Brian, Brian was talking earlier about learning how to learn. I think, when I look at Lynn's chart and sort of like the internal war inside of us to sort of feed all of our different artistic endeavors, I would also add to that, like, be okay and be comfortable with feeding your eccentricities and your obsessions, even if they're outside of the art world, right? Like, I think this time in your life, when you're about to jump into college or working or whatever it is, where you're sort of, jumping into your early 20s and figuring out your value system and your belief system and all of these things, this is a time for you to really just be learning as much as you can about anything. And so when I was starting college, I wanted to make sure that there was, some type of media inspired major that I could be learning things about, like the field that I eventually wanted to be in. But there were also things that were important to me at that time. Like I knew I wanted to travel. And so I wanted to find a college that had a study abroad program. I knew I wanted to have different types of internships. I knew that I wanted to have, just a general ed, liberal arts education. And I don't think I appreciated all of my gen ed requirements when I was in college, but this, the classes that I was taking where, it's just history, or maybe some of the things that are more boring are the things they're not boring to me now. They were boring to me then, but I remember taking a philosophy class and just sort of like rolling my eyes at it. And this is all of the stuff that feeds your art. And so if you're not paying attention, you're just going to be in a position where you get to the end of a road and you want to start making stuff, and then you really haven't been taking the time to foster your voice and your interests. And I do a lot of talks at film festivals, and people ask about like, how do I get an agent, or how do I get a manager? And a lot of times what I'm seeing when people are at that stage where they're trying to get to sort of the next step is there's a lot of writing that's about writing or about being a writer, and you need to sort of feed all of these other interests so that you are in a position where you can be telling lots of different types of stories and, you know, channeling lots of different voices. And that means having a lot of different life experiences.
Totally agreed. Yeah, absolutely. And Brian, to your point and all of your points, it sounds like, so someone who is starting and looking to apply to college, focusing less on like internships or work experience at this point, and more just making work. And that's the only way you can kind of like get that experience and figure out your place and like with what exactly you want to do. So when you are applying to college, just developing that portfolio. And even if it's not, you know, you don't have to have the best cameras. College admissions counselors understand that. A lot of us have a phone these days with a camera. It doesn't matter if you have the best equipment. I really do want to stress that that should never feel like a barrier. And it's easy to your point, Aisha, like compare yourself with someone who does have a better camera, you know, but like the storytelling really does come through. And sometimes it's hard to forget that, or it's easy to forget that these days. But know that if you are speaking authentically and you are finding that voice that we're talking about, that is going to show through to a college admissions counselor, and that'll stand out better than any sort of shiny camera you could get. So when students, it looks like some students are dropping questions in the chat when they're getting ready to make these to apply, and you all represent different schools. What sort of programs does your university or college offer to students who are getting ready to apply?
Well, I can speak to that. Columbia College right now has a BA program, Bachelor of Arts, and a BFA. And the main difference between the two is that the BFA does require a few more credits. We recommend that students should be full-time while they pursue the BFA. And it is also, the BFA gives them a clearer path on a specific discipline that they're interested in. So they may be interested in producing or in screenwriting or in directing. You can still take a variety of classes of all disciplines, but ultimately there is a clear path for you to focus on specific disciplines. That's the main difference. BA is broader and you have more flexibility in terms of the class choices that you have. So BFA is more structured. And it does require more credits, between 62 to 71 right now on the major, while the BA is it's 48. So that's the main difference between the two. And of course, we offer the MFA program, but that does not necessarily affect with our audience right now. But that's the main difference between the two. And you can still start as a BA student. And if you decide to transfer into the BFA, we can accommodate that as well.
Mimi in the chat is asking if Columbia offers a digital marketing program.
They do have digital, I don't know if it is called digital marketing, that would be a question for a different department, but we do have a marketing department, of course, and that would be in a different school than School of Media Arts, which is my school. But yeah, go to colum.edu.
So I can jump in then on DePaul and our offerings. So we also at the bachelor's levels have BAs and BFAs, both in film and television as well as in animation. Similarly, the BAs are more general. They're kind of more of a studies degree, and the BFAs are much, much more intensive and focused, and really kind of moving into like actually creating things and moving towards careers. Within that, we have 10 different concentrations in the film and television BFA, and which are defined, which give a lot of structure towards editing, comedy, filmmaking, screenwriting, show running, directing, cinematography, visual effects, sound. That's not 10, there's more. But that's documentary is also really big for that. As well, we also do have MFAs in documentary, screenwriting, filmmaking, animation, as well as MS programs for people who are looking for more technical roles, cinematography, sound, visual effects, editing as well. So we've got a wide range of options. One thing I will say, because we talked already about how the fact that everybody's path is going to change, and you're going to learn and you're going to change directions when you go through your educational process, and that's actually pretty normal. So our BFAs, while they're intensive and they're focused, that really through that first year, you can kind of move from one to another really, really easily. As you get more specialized, you kind of get more honed into those areas. But our advisors actually have a lot of flexibility. So say, for example, you're a producer, right? You're a producer, and then all of a sudden, you're really getting excited to produce specifically documentaries. We'll just say your advisor has the ability to start actually swapping out classes and adjusting your degree program so that you can, find the exact nuance of your path. And we really try to support everybody through that because no two students' goals and no two students' paths are going to be the same. We just need to provide what we can to support you through it.
At Medill, which is the journalism and integrated marketing school at Northwestern, because we also do have a school of communications, and our colleagues over there also have some great programs. But at Medill specifically, our journalism programs for undergraduate students is our Bachelor of Science in Journalism. And the thing that I think is really great about that program is that you do get exposed to a lot of different mediums. So everybody is going to learn how to write. Everybody learns the basics of journalism. Everybody gets some exposure to video. And from there, students can decide if they really want to. For example, if you decide that you really want to go in a documentary, or you really want to be a TV producer or an on-air personality, or some mix of both. So for example, we have a class that is like TV production, where every week people alternate, where maybe one week you are like an anchor and the next week you are like the executive producer, and you kind of alternate positions so that you can kind of see how that will work together. And then on top of that, I think that this particular degree is probably the most flexible out of all of our degrees at Medill, because you can also then have electives like I teach a podcasting course. You do not have to be an audio student to take that podcasting course. Anybody can take it. Audio reporting, anybody can take it. And so we also have other classes that you can kind of pair. And I have found that a lot of our undergraduate students just have a lot of interest in a lot of different things. And they can kind of pair that together. We also have a program. So when I decided I wanted to, go back to school, and I did the MSJ, the master's version the master's version of this degree, I, applied and I did like a year. Well, for people who have done our undergraduate degree, we have a version of that program that is like an accelerated master's program, the AMP program. And that means that you would basically skip the first quarter of that master's program. So that might be helpful if, let's say, for that undergraduate degree, you really, really focused on TV news. And then you decide for the graduate program, though, that you really, really want to dive deep into documentary, though. And, you can then use that to kind of do something that's maybe a different medium that you just want to kind of immerse yourself in. So there's just a lot of different options. And I know myself as well as other professors, we're all always willing to talk to high school students or any interested applicant about like some of the classes we teach and anything that you might be interested in on that. Oh, I'm sorry. And one more thing that I'll just add, just because I know there were some questions about internships with our BSJ program. Every BSJ student does a journalism residency, and we help students do that. So that is an internship that we help place students in. So there's not that stress of, will I get an internship like my friends? Will I be able to have that experience? We try to even the playing field so that you can get an internship. And there's like some equality there where it's not that, if I don't know somebody who knows somebody, I can't get an internship. Like we try to make those connections for you, and we ensure that all the internships that our students take are paid internships, because we want to make sure you get some money so you can afford to do it and actually like focus on it.
Wow, that's amazing. Shout out to Northwestern for that. We'll talk about—
That's a change. I don't think that was always that case, but then, yeah.
we'll talk about internships next. If Aisha, you want to talk about Loyola's program before we get into internships.
Yeah, no, of course. So Loyola, you can get a BA in film, and we're currently still growing, and we were lucky to hire a couple new faculty full-time tenure tracks last year. And we have an animation class. So if anyone's interested in that, we have more focused cinematography courses, more focused producing courses. I teach intro to video production. So it's like a little bit of everything, editing, casting for like freshmen. And then I also teach directing, which focuses obviously on directing, and we get to use facilities and spaces where they get to rehearse and cast. And also I teach post-production. So we talk about color in that class, different techniques of editing, and the importance of sound design, because oh my gosh, when we hear, unless it's emphasized, when you hear sound in a film, it's never a good thing. So we're growing, and something we love, we started doing a couple years ago, recently last year actually, is where we start coordinating classes in the spring. So directing, the directing class, whoever's teaching that is working with whoever's teaching producing, is working with whoever teaching editing, for students to work on one final project together. So they feel like they're on an actual set. So we'll have, for example, I taught directing last spring. And so my directing students were working alongside students from editing, producing, who, assistant directors from other various courses like intro to video, and they got PAs from that course to produce a final project. And we screened it at the famous Damon Cinema at Loyola. So they felt like it was a film festival, and which was a great experience because they're working towards something. And in that experience, they get to defend their work, because we've been to festivals where people are going to like your work or not, and you have to stand there and own it and defend it and take the feedback. So that's always something exciting. It's something for them to look forward to because they get to see their film on the big screen. So yeah, we're currently growing, and it's exciting. Thank you.
That's so cool.
Sorry, Lynn, if you just did you want to talk about the certification program at Second City?
Sure. It was just as an alternative option, we are non-accredited. So we don't offer a BA or anything like that, but we do offer a certification. So in the one-year immersive, some of the things that are comparable is you will be able to, have a crew of 15 to 18 folks who are working on a film, and everybody's film gets made. So that's a wonderful thing to be able to like go through at a relatively quick pace, get exposed to a lot of different things. The curriculum is up at the secondcityfilmschool.com. It's on the site, so I won't take time to talk about that here. But it is interesting because while we cannot offer internships, I do help connect students to entry-level jobs, which is sometimes what you hope for at the end of an internship. So it's a little tougher sometimes to like find those connections for somebody to give an opportunity to someone without the internship first. But in other times we have found pathways and created partnerships where people, now that we have, 5 or 6 years underneath the school, that they are, seeing the talent that is coming out of the school. So they have been more willing to bring folks on set, and people who already have experience like Juliette will give other current students, as things are rolling through, they will give them opportunities to be on their films and all that good stuff. So thanks.
Yes, Lynn is the best. I highly recommend everyone to just go wherever Lynn is, and it doesn't matter what school it is. You could go to an architecture place and I'd be like, I think I should do a degree in architecture. We have a couple questions relating to internships specifically. Mimi is asking if you have any recommendations for internships within Chicago. Chicago is like a huge hub for commercial work. TV is getting really big. Do your universities offer any that are specifically located in the Midwest, or do they all kind of outsource to LA and New York?
So at DePaul, we actually have experiential learning is a requirement for our curriculum, and the vast majority of that is done through internships, which means every single DePaul student is going through an internship where they're getting their degree. And the vast majority of that is happening here in Chicago. We do also have an LA quarter, similar to what was discussed here, and that's also internship based in Los Angeles. But Chicago is huge, right? There's tons of opportunities for internships. In general, what I said before is I think internships become far more important in your junior and senior years of college later on, or those years where you're getting ready to go out into the field. Internships, when you're younger, the really good ones really aren't available because you don't know enough yet. You need to be able to, yes, you're learning from them, but you as an intern are bringing some of yourself and your own education into that. And so my advice is, especially in the early parts of your education, focus on your education, focus on your community, your culture, and your skills. The internships are there and they will come, but that's a later step. And worrying about that too soon is a little bit of putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. At Columbia, we do have a career center, and the career center offers a lot of resources and guidance and mentorship on how to prep for your internships and where to apply and what's a good fit for you to help you search, so that you make that investment for yourself on your own development, but also that you become an asset to whoever you're working with. So we have a career center that they do send and guide the students to multiple places here in Chicago and in the suburbs as well. There's a lot of production and a lot of work that happens on small boutique companies in the suburbs. And we also have a very strong semester in LA program as well. And part of the requirement for that is to have an internship experience. And so it's very well put together. And I do agree with Brian about waiting a notch before you start thinking about internship, because you're going to discover a lot of things that you're very good at, like we've discussed before, that you didn't know. And so now you are becoming really an asset to a company, and it is a two-way street. It's what you get out of it, but also what they can benefit from you. But Chicago has a ton of opportunities, and we're getting just bigger and bigger every time. And it could be summer, or it could be internships during your semesters as well, which is great. Gives you a lot of flexibility in that sense.
I would actually also add, because I think Juliette asked, are the internships here in Chicago? They absolutely are. Chicago is an amazing place to grow and be a student and to be a filmmaker. So if you go to LA or New York, yeah, of course, they're big names. There's a lot of stuff there, but it's a really big pool. It's an ocean. And it's very difficult to get to support and grow. Where Chicago is sort of the best of both worlds. We're big enough, we're international, the jobs and internships are here, but we're also small enough and focused enough that people are actually supported. And you can actually really build a career here a lot faster and a lot more in a supported way than you can on those places on the coasts. It's a really, really great place and to grow and be a creative person.
Yeah, I would just jump off of that and say, so I teach the internship class that is the sort of companion piece to the internship that the students do here in LA. So they come out to LA, we help set them up at internships, and then they meet with me 6 or 7 times throughout the semester. And I'm there as like anything that they need. Like we talk about resumes, we talk about what's going on at the internship, we troubleshoot all the time through kind of what's going on, trying to wade through it. So it's not just sort of like they're thrown to the wolves. They have somebody that they can continuously come to with, questions or whatever. But I do think that it's really, for the semester in LA program, it exactly what I think Brian said, where it's really beneficial to seniors and people who can transition that internship, use it as a springboard into a job. And we do have juniors and seniors. And so it's tough for me because a lot of times with the juniors, when they have to go back to Chicago, they may have gotten this great opportunity that similarly to me, when I was, having to make that choice, like they don't even have a choice. They have to go back and they have to graduate. So, I would definitely recommend for any type of kind of semester in LA, or if there's a similar type program in New York or somewhere else that you want to explore, I would save that for your last semester. But to go off of, just how many wonderful opportunities there are in Chicago, I would use maybe your junior year to jump into some of the internships in Chicago if you're in a Chicago program. Because from what I've seen, when people do come out, the ones that really stand out and get the best internships in LA are people who have interned before at places in Chicago. So just food for thought.
Awesome.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Just quickly, I know that also high school students, and I was one of these a long time ago, you have a lot of energy and you want to do something. And outside of internships, like pre-internships, there are tons of people that are already making movies that could always use a set of hands. If you contact schools, or, there's various places that are online, or making your own stories and calling in your friends, just volunteering and keeping the wheels turning. These are things that are really good to do to learn and observe and burn up some of that energy before you're specializing, which I agree with everything everyone has said here about, in your junior and your senior year, you're going to start focusing more and getting those juicy internships that will help fully lead you to a job. But in the meantime, learning your voice, observing, getting on, it doesn't have to be a professional set, any set, be an extra set of hands, let people know that you're there, because it takes a lot to make a film or a short or whatever, and people are more than happy to have your help.
Yeah, no, I agree, Lynn, but I was going to say, I totally forgot to mention, thanks Lee Hood for mentioning in the chat, but Loyola also has a full program in multimedia journalism along with film. So it's a very great program. I did want to add to the internships a little bit. I agree with everyone about focusing on kind of knowing your strongest area first, and then junior and senior year, you kind of know, like, if you like the screenwriting aspect or what kind of focus works the best for you and your passion. Loyola for film, I can speak to that. We require students to do an internship before they graduate, and I'm actually taking over the film and digital media internships next spring. So that will be a new thing for me. And I agree. I think Chicago's huge. It has so many internships out there, and it's growing. And I also believe that, Lynn, to talk to your point about kind of getting on sets early on, I agree. Like, not to discredit any of us filmmakers as well as teachers, we teach, right? But I always tell my students, there's only so much you learn in the classroom. You need to go on sets. There's how you learn the experience. You need to work in a post house. You need to be in the action and put yourself in that kind of environment. That's also how you learn. And I think that's a huge reason why I love internships. It allows them to experience it. And I think, Brian, you brought up a point where people want to be directors. And I had this happen recently. A student's like, I want to direct, and they're on a set. They're like, Aisha, I hate it. I'm just like, oh my God. So put yourself in that environment and learn. And internships are great for that.
If anyone is looking for a more concrete internship, like a place to start, some links, some companies in Chicago, I am going to relink the resource guide in the chat. I just sent that in, and we do list out some internships available in Chicago if you're looking to start looking into those now. I do want to address this last question in the chat. What advice would you give to students interested in becoming a film educator, specifically in high school? Can anyone speak to that?
I can jump in on that. So first of all, an educator isn't just a pure educator all the way through. You need to be a practitioner. You have to sort of know what you teach. So you still are going to need to get out there and start building a career in the area that you're interested in. So everything we said already starts with what you need to do. The one thing you may want to be aware of is where you want to go in education, because academia has its own structures. So if you want to teach just sort of loosely or more technically, typically a bachelor's degree is fine. If you want to be a university professor, you're going to need a terminal degree. And so that's going to be either an MFA, which is the common one for media and filmmaking, or if you're more a studies person, you'd actually have to go all the way to a PhD. But even that degree is not enough. Like, so you have to have your degree, but you also have to have your career together in order to be able to qualify for tenure track or those types of positions.
Great. Does anyone have any closing thoughts? We have 5 minutes left. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff we wanted to cover that we didn't necessarily get to, but a lot of great things have been said already. If anyone has any closing thoughts, things that you really want to get off your chest that you think is important for our attendees to know, feel free to speak.
I'll just say one thing, like this panel represents, like there's an incredible range of amazing options for you in Chicago, right? Every single one of these is fantastic. It just might not be right for you in your path. So don't only look at the programs and the resources, but also get to know the cultures of the place that you're looking at. Because again, this is where you're going to be meeting your tribe. This is where you're going to be kind of growing your own thinking process. And that's going to be different for different people in different ways. So yeah, go beyond the paper, go beyond the websites, visit the places, talk to people. That'll really give you a better sense of where you may fit.
And I'd add really quickly that like one way, we talked a lot about working with your current folks and like creating stuff and getting people together. And I think one thing we fail to do sometimes is leaning into the stuff we already know a lot about. So if you know a lot about gaming, what is a thing about gaming that you think is not covered well? Could you make that into something, right? Like leaning into the things that you can either research really well or really well, you understand the nuance of that thing, because the best part about that is that then really you can focus on the art and the medium, and you're not learning like a brand new industry thing that you're singing. And I think that that's sometimes some of the best storytelling. So whenever I'm teaching like students, for example, I'm teaching like podcasting and the students that have never done audio, I'm like, please choose a topic you feel great about, because then you can do something you're really interested in. It feels good. And also a lot of these projects take a lot of time. You want to make sure that it's something you like, because if you do it right and you spend in all of these months or sometimes years on it, it's going to get on your nerves. You're going to start getting tired of the project. You want it to be something that you really care about. And so I think topic matters, and not being afraid to kind of lean into that. So I think, when Lynn was talking about everything coming together, I think about the past jobs I've had where I was like, why did I have this job? And it's like, oh, because I learned about this very unique thing that maybe I wouldn't have learned about if I didn't have that job, right? And so really leaning into your experiences to help in the storytelling process is just a benefit. And that's something that smart recruiters and future employers will be looking at.
And I just want to add to what you said, Arian, like, amazing. You said it well. And if this is your passion, if filmmaking or the art is your passion, then you're in the right place. Don't worry. Like, if you're going into this field wanting to win the next Oscar, not to say you aren't, but it's like, if you feel like you have to eat, sleep, drink and create, you're in the right place. Okay. And everything will, because I always tell my students, pick passion over stability. Film is the less traveled, right? Arts is the less traveled kind of road, and it's bumpy and it's spontaneous. And that's what's rewarding about it. You have to work hard. But it's great because you love it, hate it. But if you go to a 9-to-5 and you have a lot of money and you hate your job, what's the point? Right? So if this is something you're very passionate about, then you got it. Do it,
And I would actually just say on the flip side of that, and this sort of goes off of, I think, what Lynn highlighted, which is so interesting about the Second City program, is that if you're not sure, I just want you to know that there are plenty of people that work in this industry and who find their way to filmmaking or to some specific art later down the line who don't have a film degree or don't have an arts related degree. So if there is something that, you're interested when you're not sure and you want to pursue something else, just know that it's never kind of off the table. There's many ways into this industry, and there's many paths to being an artist or being whatever you want to be.
I'm going to agree with all of that and everything that everybody has said here, like so much wisdom on this panel to talk to the students who are considering this. But one distinction I think that I've observed over time is just, it's the arts, the illusion is like Aisha, what you were saying, the illusion or what we hear is that the arts are less stable than anything else. I don't believe that. I think if you are passionate and you jump in, they're just as stable as anything else, because nothing's stable anyway. So jump in and do what you love. Eventually, just putting one foot in front of the other and paying attention to your point of view, your story, learning what your story is, putting it out there, helping other people, doing all, the things that good humans do and good creators do, you're going to end up just fine. So yeah. If anything, I think just bashing the illusion that the arts are less stable than anything else. I just don't think that's true.
And we can't see anybody who's in the webinar right now, but please don't be shy to reach out. You will get our information and we would love to hear directly from you. I'm sure new questions will pop up after this, but connect early because we want to hear what, how we can help and how we can get you involved. And that's why we're here. We're spending time with you. And unfortunately, we can't see your faces, but we would love to hear from all of you. So you'll get our information and don't second guess. If you have a question, reach out.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. I just want to extend one more thank you to these amazing panelists who I feel like I could talk to for another 2 hours probably. It's been a real joy getting to know all of you and hearing your thoughts and all your experiences. John?
Well, yeah, thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Juliette. This was a great workshop. Again, this will be up online. The recorded version will be archived online around Monday or Tuesday. And then Rebecca Cowing, our executive director, if you look in the chat field, there's information about high school student awards that we're giving out in March. Again, also the scholarships, high school and college scholarships are available, NATAS scholarships. Again, go to chicagomeonline.org. And then Rebecca, she's on the call as well. So if you have any questions about the scholarship program, feel free to reach out to Rebecca. But I'd like to thank our great panelists. I'd like to thank Ellie and Juliette for a wonderful seminar. I was supposed to leave early, but this was so interesting that I had to stay for the whole thing to listen. I wish I had this resource when I was looking into media as a high school student. So I hope you all appreciated this presentation, and we'll have more workshops like this beginning next year in January. So thank you so much for attending. Rebecca, did you have any final thoughts?
Yes, so thank you to everyone. The panelists were all excellent. Thank you so much for participating. We're so thrilled with our junior board. It was a new endeavor that we had about 2 years ago that we started. Right. And thank you to Juliette and Ellie for organizing this and putting it together. You guys are great. So we are probably going to be looking for new junior board members in a couple months. So stay tuned if you want information about applying for the junior board. Please email me at rcowing@meonline.tv. It can be for current college students who can apply to be a junior board member. So we just had some junior board members participate in our local Emmy Awards that we just did this past week, and they were really excellent volunteers, and all of the junior board members are just really great and interested in film and TV. So thank you guys for doing that, and thank you to all our panelists. So feel free to email me if you have any questions. I'm happy to help.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
good rest of your
Thank
Saturday. Thank
you.
you everyone for
Thank
attending.
you guys so
Everyone
much.
should
Thank you.